Welcome to my review of Contra Operation Galuga, and this game is on pretty much most modern platforms. I played it on Switch and Series X, and this footage is from the Series X version. It took me around 2 hours and 3 minutes to beat my first time playing on normal with health bars enabled, and of course using the perks. Perks are basically things that you can unlock in this little in-game shop. You know, you don't spend real money, but you earn in-game credits for performing well and beating stages and things like that, and you can use that money to buy a bunch of different unlocks. So it is a cool system. It does give the game a lot of replay. You can unlock new characters and a bunch of perks that make the game easier, like expanding your life bar a little bit, having some more lives to start with, keeping weapons upon death and things like that. You have 2 weapon slots. So, you can hold 2 weapons at any given time. But anytime you die, you will lose that weapon unless you have a perk that lets you keep things when you die. You have unlimited continues. And you will, if you lose all your lives, you will start from the last checkpoint you got to in the stage on normal mode. Now, once you get to hard mode will, it removes all the stage checkpoints aside from the final stage of the game. It has 1 checkpoint in the final stage after you beat the first boss of that stage. But aside from that, there are no checkpoints on hard mode. But you can start the stages from the beginning at least. It's not a 1cc mode. So those are the basics. You can use the old 8-directional aiming if you want that, or you can use analog, which is 360-degree full aiming. So you got some options in the settings. You have a fixed shot where you can just stand in place and fire. You have auto-scrolling levels like these, where the screen scrolls automatically and you just kill shit as it moves. And of course you have bosses usually in the middle of each stage and at the end. And the full game is maybe about an hour long, if you don't fuck up, if you don't lose any continues. But, my first playthrough with the health bars, it took around 2 hours and 3 minutes, but, I am accustomed to these kind of games in one-hit death mode, as I play through a lot of these types of arcade games and stuff that are much harder than this, than this game is, especially with a life bar. So, if you're already used to the old Contra games, then this is not going to take you too long to beat with the health bars enabled and the perks. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this game. I thought the level design was great, really enjoyable, really good action. I do really like the all the explosions and that aspect of the visuals. But one issue I do have is that when there's a lot of shit going on screen, it is very hard to see the bullets because they will blend into the explosions and things. They don't really stand out like they would in like a bullet hell game. So trying to use your peripheral vision can get you killed a lot, like you would in a lot of these games. So you really do have to be a little bit extra mindful of bullets than I normally would because of that. I got blindsided. A lot of times I get blindsided by stuff. Of course, you can memorize the layouts of the levels, obviously, but you see, it is easy to get hit. I was also playing on a 65-inch screen sitting about 5 feet from it, so I would have to turn my head to see shit that was on the other side of the screen. So, of course, that's going to blindside me a lot, but the bullets did really blend in for me, so that was one issue I had. My second big issue, it's considered a minor issue for most people, but if you're playing casually, you won't care, but I would have liked there to be a retry feature, in the menu so that you could restart the stage immediately. Because sometimes when you lose a life, you don't want to play the rest of the stage losing a life in the beginning of the stage on hard mode because there's no checkpoints on hard mode. So, aside from the one I mentioned. So it would be nice to have a quick retry. Maybe some better practice options to practice the bosses, like a practice mode. There is a challenge mode, which is really cool, and you can use that a little bit to practice some of the bosses, since some of the challenges are just single boss fights with, some harder stuff added in. The challenges are great. They're like speedrun type of challenges, things like that. A lot of different configurations of things in the main game. So very cool. That definitely gives it some replay. I haven't completed all those yet. But I have gone through the game about 5 times. I beat it 3 times on normal and twice on hard so far with the one-hit deaths. So, I feel like I have a good feeling of the game by now. I've done most of my gameplay on it at this point. Third boss is very cool. These are pretty much... It remakes a lot of shit from the original Contra, but it looks very different, obviously. But it's inspired by a lot of the stages from Contra 1 for the NES. So a lot of that is from that, the themes and things like that. It has some of the original music, like similar music. You can unlock tracks from Castlevania and things, different music tracks. Boss fights are mostly very, very good. This one you can bullshit by staying on the right edge of the screen, which I detail shit like this in my tutorial. I have a tutorial for hard mode, the one-hit death mode, with perks enabled, and I'll post a link to that in the description, so check that out. I may do some more tutorials if I beat some of the other harder modes. I'm thinking of doing another tutorial for my playthrough with the character Brownie, but Brownie really shreds the game. I'm also using a weapon swapping trick, which a lot of speedrunners would use in these types of games, like Cuphead. And what it does is I'm swapping weapons continuously, so I'm basically doubling my damage output since both weapons are firing their shots on screen at the same time, basically. So that is something you can do for increased damage, and I explain that a little bit more in the tutorial. Now this is the worst stage in the game for me. I don't mind the obstacle navigation, like these parts are decent. But there's a lot of stupid shit where the gems in the foreground will block your vision. And here it's not egregious here, but see here you can't really see what the fuck is going on and you get blindsided by bullets. Now of course this is an easy one to learn. But some of the other ones are trickier and more of a pain in the ass. I may show them in this review. Sometimes you get a glitch too where these bubbles go through the ceiling. See, these bubbles are not supposed to come up this high, and it makes this part a lot more irritating. But, some minor issues, but this stage I really didn't like. It was just a personal preference. I don't like these things that shower down bubbles because you got to fire up at them as you're walking through, and it seems like sometimes I randomly just lose a life when I'm trying to run through those things. And I don't really know a consistent way to do it without, any error. I mean, most of the time I'll be okay, but it's just those few times that will irritate because on hard mode you have no checkpoints in this stage, and it's like an 8 or 9 minute stage, so obviously fucking up is not good. You don't want to lose lives for no reason. So it does kind of piss me off. I would have liked the quick retry option as well, like I said. Little things like that do start to irritate, but I don't really knock the game down for it. It's just it would have been just better to have a little bit more in the menus and things like that. But you see how the gem is really blocking my view here. There's enemies in that area, and you can't see them really. You can barely see what the fuck is going on. And some areas you're pretty much completely blind, or it reverses your movement, so you're seeing yourself move backwards. Stuff like this, you see, it throws off the perspective, and it's just really shitty. That was the worst part of the game for me. These little gem sections. I really not a fan of that shit. Because, when you take deaths in those areas, it's just irritating. Like this one has a shower of acid coming down, but you can't see it. I don't know if I already passed it in here, because I know this stage by this point. But I may be showing this stage in its entirety because this was the most annoying stage. I think I wanted to showcase it. It's very learnable, though. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can kind of creep through like I'm doing. No, I didn't show the whole stage, but you get the idea. That was my only downside of the game, really, gameplay-wise, was that one stage I didn't like. And, it's not like it's a horrible stage, but I just don't like replaying it because it's like there's all this little bullshit that I get blindsided by. And it's also a slower-paced stage because there's just traps everywhere. You got to move slower. And it's just easy to get hit by bullets. Especially, like I said, sitting so close to the screen, I get blindsided by bullets easy. So it was just harder to come up with a routine where I didn't get hit. So just showing another boss fight. Like I said, the boss fights are very cool. The difficulty is kind of, unbalanced as you'd expect. I don't find that as a bad thing, but the 6th stage is really the hardest stage. At least for me it was. And then there's, 2 more stages after that. And, the 7th stage is quite easy. And then the 8th stage, it is quite a hard stage. I mean, it's not easy. But it wasn't too bad for me. But the 6th stage, like I said, took me like 3 hours, 20 minutes on hard with the one-hit deaths. So that was tough. But I found it was kind of hard for the wrong reasons. Like, to me, those weren't good reasons for it to be difficult. It was just like I would die when I was trying to, like, reconfigure my weapon loadout. Pick up the right weapons that I want. Or, just getting blindsided, basically. So I didn't really like the design. But all the other stages, I liked all the stages. I even liked the auto-scrolling stages a lot, and a lot of people didn't like those, thought they were either too long or maybe too easy, but I enjoyed them. I thought it was a nice mix-up. I didn't have any complaints with the auto-scrollers. But yeah, you pretty much have story mode, arcade mode, and then you have a challenge mode. Now the game does support co-op apparently. I think you can play up to 4 players at the same time on arcade mode. Story mode may be limited to 2 players at the same time, which I'm not really a fan of, the idea of limiting certain things in story mode as opposed to arcade mode. I don't like that, because I unlocked the character named Brownie that I wanted to use, and it took a lot of credits to unlock. Kind of a bit of a grind to unlock it, but once I unlocked the character, it turned out he can only be used in arcade mode, not story mode. And you know, my run at the time was on story mode. I was doing a hard mode one-hit run, as you see here, one-hit death run. Of course, you can choose life bars or one-hit deaths as one of the options, but I was doing a one-hit death mode, and I just wanted to use Brownie, you know, but I couldn't use him because he can only be used in arcade mode. So I didn't really like that, but there are a lot of unlockable characters that play quite a bit differently. Like some of them have grapple hooks, some of them have slides. Their weapons even behave differently. Like spread shot for one character is going to be a different weapon than it is for another sometimes. So while a lot of the weapons are pretty much the same between characters, there's differences. You know, there's ones that have charge shots, and it really changes the way the game plays. It's very well done. That was one of the best aspects of the game to me, was unlocking the characters. I also really like the perk system, even though it's kind of, I know a lot of hardcore Contra players will frown on that, but I mean, I've beaten most of the old Contra games that are much harder than this, and I still thought it was really fun, because you have the option to set it to one-hit deaths. You know, you don't have to try to be so-called taking the easy way out or whatever. You can play it how you want to play it. So if you want, you can set it to one-hit death and make play it on the harder modes. Now, hard mode will also limit the lives that you can have starting with, your default starting lives, but that will be a higher number depending on if you unlock the perk. It's a passive perk that increases your lives pool, basically, so you'll have more starting lives. Now, if you're playing on normal, you'll have like 7 or 9 lives, but when you play on hard mode, it will cap that off at 4. So I guess if you didn't have that perk unlocked, since it's a passive perk, it's automatic. You don't have to equip it. The other perks have to be equipped, but some of them are passive, like you don't have to equip them. Like if you get a bigger health bar, that's automatic. You might actually have to delete your save file to get rid of that. I don't know how you would reset that. But when you're playing on the harder modes, you don't have to worry about that, because most of them don't have health bars. So there is that, So you may only get like 2 lives on hard mode if you're not unlocking any of the perks. So aside from that, I'm trying to think about, there is these harder modes called extreme modes or some shit, but they cost a ton of credits to unlock. I haven't even unlocked them yet, as much as I've played the game. It takes a while. I think one of them is 20,000 credits to unlock, another is like 15,000 maybe, so you're spending like something like 35,000 credits just to fucking unlock the harder modes, which is a total waste. I mean, you're going to have to grind to unlock that if unless you're not buying the other perks in the perk shop. But I would have rather they just, for harder modes, I think they should unlock. They should at least unlock when you beat the game, So to me, that was a downside. I don't think it should be that fucking expensive to unlock them. I mean, I could see 5,000 points or whatever, but to have to grind to get them is kind of shit. So this is the final boss. But yeah, I don't like some of the things like that where you have to grind to unlock the harder modes. I mean, hard mode will unlock for you, I think, after you beat normal. So there is that. I show a safe spot here that I found for this part. Which I go over in the tutorial. But, I didn't like that I had to unlock the harder modes. I may not even play the harder modes because of that. But the harder modes are 1cc modes, meaning you get no continues, which I don't really like that way of increasing difficulty. I find it to be artificial when they limit your lives or they make it so you don't have any continues. I'm not really a fan of that style of difficulty. Or like Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection on Legend mode, which I'm working on. I have to get back to it. They pretty much remove most of the checkpoints to make it harder. They make the game harder as well. The gameplay is harder, but I don't really like the idea of removing checkpoints or, gimping it so that you're 1cc'ing the game. I'd rather do 1cc as a personal challenge, but that's just me. I don't think that the hardest mode should be 1cc by default. Little things like that are little issues that I have. Also, one of the modes is 1cc with a health bar, and the other is 1cc with the one-hit deaths. I mean, they didn't need to make separate modes for that. You know what I mean? They could have just, because you can select one-hit death or life bar, they could have just let you determine it for yourself. And as far as 1cc, that's a personal challenge you could take on, but I would rather, I'd rather that not be the setting in the mode. I would like to actually be able to work on the mode with continues, but I would like it if they made the gameplay density harder. You know what I mean? Like make the bullets more aggressive or whatever. But I'm not really a big fan of doing it that way. But it's still kind of cool, I guess. I mean, it's definitely a hard mode. That's just the way the mode is. So I don't fault the game heavily for that. But because of some of my smaller complaints, the game for me is like an 8.5 out of 10. But I thought it was great. I thought it was a great game. I replayed the shit out of it. It's one of the, I guess you could say, side-scrolling games in this style that I've played the most modern-wise. You know what I mean? I haven't played one like this in a while, like replaying it this many times, and it's very addictive with all the unlocks. Highly recommend the game. Check out my tutorial if you would, if you'd like to work on hard mode with one-hit deaths. I think it'll be useful. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.